you, and that's all to bring in the Novus Ordo Seclorum, the New World Order.
It's
right?
coming. See, the thing is, most people think that
I literally just said that, and I said the entire point is that anyone who's awake understands that there's a great awakening that has sparked, and at the same time, we are in the middle of a quickening. We are going into an intersection, and people need to wake up, so at least less people will subscribe to that. I said, we're like, haha, the fire's in LA, but the fire's everywhere, and the fire's just unseen in certain places. Proverbial fire, since we're talking so biblical together.
Well, a lot of people unfortunately believe that the New World Order is this obvious evil, communistic, dark, apocalyptic kind of New World Order where you're going to be eating crickets and it's this atheistic state, which of course that is the counterfeit that they've fed people, so that the actual New World Order, which is going to be a world of false light, of religion mixed with politics and nationalism, that is coming to rescue people from the counterfeit, a New World Order, which everybody thought was with Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and stuff.
The fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution was the Fourth Reich.
Right.
Remember
they are doing what they did in World War II, except this time they're playing the direction in the opposite direction.
Hitler was a tool. Hitler was the general of the Third Reich. The Third Reich was to create a military, through militaristic forces, to create a large amount of land where you have enough resources and enough people, etc., to basically rule the world. And the Fourth Reich was that rule enacted. And so when we say the fourth industrial revolution is the Fourth Reich, and they have within themselves combat. They're not like one unified force, right, amongst themselves.
Yeah, it's a many-headed hydra fighting with itself.
That's the thing. Like dark spirits, for example, battle each other. Two zombies will eat each other if there's nothing else. True. That's part of the complex problem. The interesting part about it is that people, what was once called conspiracy, I actually put in the thing, I said Christian scholar and conspiracy realist for your name. Why? Because the only conspiracy is that these things are not true.
Right.
The conspiracy is the lie. The conspiracy is two masks are better than one. The conspiracy is the vaccine. The conspiracy is the government's trying to take care of you.
Now they're getting so clever that they're even creating the counter narrative. For example, when you had the quote unquote assassination of Trump attempt in July or whatever it was, you can think whatever you want about that. I've evaluated the evidence, and it's obvious to me that it was faked. It was Jesuit theater designed to propel Trump over the edge, to cement his religious base, to make the Jews believe that he's anointed by God as their political savior. It's all designed to fool people into a particular delusion.
I wouldn't say the Jews, I would say the Zionists. Yeah,
the Zionists. But some of the I've seen some rabbis. I don't know. I don't think they were Zionists. The ones I saw that were saying, "Oh, he got his ear pierced."
Zionists.
It says in Leviticus, "You're the servant of the Lord if you have your ear pierced," and something. Yeah,
that's appropriate. No, I'm talking about Zionist Christians and the Zionist Jews.
Oh, for sure. They're already frothing at the mouth for Trump even before that. So, but the point is that the narrative has now collapsed. You had the liberal narrative that was everybody knew that it was wrong, but now they control the counter narrative too. It's always left and right. It's always duality.
Yeah.
They control the liberal narrative that's telling you, oh no, it wasn't an assassination. And the other one says, oh no, look, it was actually conspiracy. He was trying to be assassinated by the deep state. When in fact, the truth is behind these two things, which is that this was just a show of dialectics to basically make you believe that he's anointed by God to do what he's doing. So
thesis versus antithesis equals
exactly. Yeah.
The puppet only is in full movement if there's two hands moving it.
Right. That's a good point.
That's exactly what's happening across that. It's like, oh, are you hungry, Tudor? Great. Would you like Chinese or Italian? It's irrelevant which one you choose. I give you the
same chef. Same chef making them both.
Yeah, same chef. When we have these conversations, it's going to be interesting because you're familiar with the middle ground between the Jews and the Muslims. Like you understand where Christianity is on an island of its own, where the Jews and the Muslims would have their common ground too.
Well, I'm not super familiar, but I can see where they're familiar because they both operate from the same fundamental perspective.
a Jew can go inside of a mosque and pray, but they can't enter a church, for example. There's reasons for that.
Well, they're free to enter the church and repent and believe in Jesus. But yeah, oh sure, from their side, yeah.
That's an open invitation from Tudor.
Right? Go and repent. I invite all the Jews to do that. But as far as the Jews and Muslims, yes, they do have a fundamentally similar theological basis because they do not espouse a completely sovereign God. They are synergistic in their view of salvation with good works and rules and regulations. So yeah, they're just part of the same. It's no different than Catholicism. Let's lump Catholicism in there and Orthodoxy. Catholicism with its sacramental system and running the rat wheel of doing all these rituals in order to keep your salvation, which is nonsense, is the same thing as Judaism, is the same thing as Islam. It's all doing in order to be. Whereas when God gives you his spirit, you are given a new way of being that results in doing, in new works. It's the complete opposite of what God does. Religion is the opposite of how God works because God is being. Yod He Vav He is what? Ye Asher Ye. I am the being one. I am the source of all being there is. So God is being. He just is. So he gives you his being, and that results in new works. Whereas religion does it the opposite way. It's an inversion. I do in order to be, and then you never actually be because you're chasing. It's the problem Buddha realized. But of course, Buddha's conclusion, because he didn't have the full truth, I believe, was okay. Well, I just need to abandon this world and just sit there and meditate all day and lose myself to nothingness, which is just death. So he was onto something in the sense that chasing these worldly benchmarks and desires is a problem, and that's exactly what religion does. Religion is a constant rat race.
Well, he had, but Buddha in the form of the first Buddha, Prince Siddhartha, because there's been like 26.
Right.
He already had those world things because he was a prince, and then he was married off, and then he had a son, which he named like Bundle of Sticks because his hands would be tied forever. So he was searching for the source of suffering. He already had those world things, and that's an interesting thing because if you don't have those things, like for example, like a proverbial millionaire, if you've never been a millionaire even for a year, then you would never know what it feels like to drive your car of choice or to have the world of choice, etc. And only when you reach that point can you realize, oh, this isn't the point of it all. So he was lucky enough to be born with all, though he was born at the end of the story of so many people, that he had to understand the causation of the negativity or the darkness, so to speak, the confusion upon the earth. Whereas a lot of people are born into that and think that it's grass is greener on the other side. And we spend our life going on the other, trying to get to the other end of the fence. And we think that when we win the gold medal or make $1 million or get the Lamborghini, that we think there's going to be like a parade. The angels are going to sound the trumpet. And
you made it.
We did it. And it just doesn't.
Jesus says, "What does it profit man to gain the whole world but lose his soul?" Yes. So that's the most important thing is what happens when Jesus returns, because you're going to live forever if you're resurrected to glory.
Listen, and the way the world is, Tudor, I believe that if someone appeared, a Jewish person appeared and said that he was the Messiah, they would stone him. And I think that if so,
well, the rabbis are all over this Hanukkah guy. They're frothing at the mouth for all of his miracles, and they're practically almost. I mean, I haven't seen any recent stuff with him, but the stuff that I saw like a year ago, they were all over Hanukkah. So
yeah,
who knows?
Listen, do I? For me,
do I think it's the guy? I don't know. I'm just saying he's a good candidate. I think he's a good candidate.
I've been an ayahuasquero for 12 years. Okay. So I have served medicine to over 10,000 people. I have served all around the world. Okay. And through every religion and through everywhere you can imagine. I serve medicine to the wealthiest people and the poorest people and diseased, sick people who are possessed, everything. I can see someone have no reason to live, think that their world's going to be over, serve them ayahuasca, clean them off, and then now they're reborn, So I've come to learn through that process that humans are very easy to anoint people. if I just covered my head a little bit, okay, all I have to do is grow my beard back out, cover my head, and then just show up. It'll be
get that spiritual look going.
It'll be on, my brother. Trust me. And I could convince tens of thousands of people to follow me because I speak in scripture. And the difference is that what the medicine taught me was like that I am in a closet of mirrors, that I cannot fool myself. Like, before a thought of doing something like nefarious is even fully formed, it just gets, by my consciousness just evaporates it so fast. I have to tread a thin line of what I can and can't do based off of morality, right? Now that morality was formed through my depth of diving deeper into the human soul. Without a name, without even knowing, what I've been searching for the last few years. I've been looking for the oldest, most accurate name of God. Okay, that's how I dove into the understanding of the Elohim, understanding what was Abraham's. Oh, El Shaddai, and then I realized, there's El Elyon, and I realized at a certain point, and then let's say Jesus. Okay, well, Jesus, the letter J wasn't created till like the 1300s. Okay, so his name in Greek was Jesus, and then it was Isus in Aramaic, etc., and so on, right? And so I more and more, although I still want to know the exact vibrational code to speak directly to the Almighty, I realize that that's just my ego. Right. It's my ego trying to. So then what? Let's say I'm blessed with the exact perfect vibrational code and linguistic code that I'm going to make videos about it and start my own religion. You see what I mean? And whereas if I didn't have all those experiences and that amount of time working with a medicine like ayahuasca, probably yes, that's exactly what I would have done, and most people would have, given not going into the firing range literally once or twice a week for over a decade. If I just even anything I thought out of the ordinary or anything that I considered doing, like I would drink medicine and then serve the ayahuasca to the people, and I would just get haunted by even just thoughts that I had, so, and of course, plants, the way I look at the earth is you have, we say Mother Earth, right? But then the earth, there's the sun, then there's the moon, and then there's the three kingdoms of the earth. And what's going on here? Oh, he had to. Anyway, and we have the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, and the animal kingdom, right? And then one cannot exist without the other, and that's divine creation for sure. And we have the plant kingdom, whether it's in the proverbial Garden of Eden, or whether we have something like ayahuasca, which is like the womb of the earth is the Amazon now. But what I've seen, going in a full circle, I have served medicine to priests. I've served Orthodox priests. Like in cathedrals, I've met rabbis because certain people wanted to drink medicine because they have ailments, like for example, drug addictions. And they ask, can you talk to my rabbi to make sure it's kosher? And guess what happens after about a 10 or 15 minute conversation? The rabbi wants to drink the medicine. You know why? Because the rabbi's got problems. And for the last 12 years, my life was consisting of listening to the deepest, darkest, secret problems of people's lives, knowing that there's hope, and then serving them the medicine and watching them be cleansed and in essence, like you say, reborn. And I've witnessed this.
Well, my version of second birth is not that version. I think there's an important distinction there to be made.
If someone were to take a baptism in a traditional form like John the Baptist and accepting some variation, and someone going and drinking ayahuasca and being all of a sudden healed from a sex addiction, or for example, someone who was molested.
Yeah, but the difference in those outcomes, Omar, there's a very important distinction you got to make. They may feel the same way, but there's a very different distinction. Whereas you are getting healed from, let's say, a drug addiction, which I don't doubt that those things are possible, because those herbs are very powerful compounds. They can do a lot of very powerful things. In fact, they're using mushrooms now to help with, PTSD and things like that. So there is promise for some of these things to help things in different ways than allopathic medicine, for sure, if they're guided in some sort. I'm not condoning or saying anything about it. I'm just saying there are definitely results that can happen. That being said, somebody who goes and gets healed of a drug addiction from taking an ayahuasca trip is still a sinner that needs to be saved by the payment of the blood of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I am relentless because
I got you.
What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? I mean, you could be cured of all the addictions in general if you aren't paid for.
But Tudor, in the moment when someone is drowning underneath an ocean, what they need is an arm to pull them out, not a cross in my hand. I need my hand to grab them and pull them out. Then they can worry about that next part. Because
there are people who've come out of addiction without these things. I'm not saying that's true. Left or right of it.
Christian based. No, but the interesting part about this, the point I was leading towards is, the interesting thing is that the Catholic becomes more Catholic. The Jew becomes.
Well, that's not a good thing.
The Muslim becomes a bigger Muslim. The Christian becomes a bigger Christian, and I realize, and it seems to me, that it appears that whatever their path of expression, they just are like reborn into it in some way without that. For example, like, there's people, I've served medicine to people who were parts of different cults, not just like, Jewish as well as Christian, and people have been molested by all these various priests. It's disgusting.
Oh, for sure. Right? Yeah, there's a lot of that.
And they resent their religion, but after they get cleaned off, and sometimes demons ripped out of people, they find their faith. And the interesting part is that faith they find is the one that they already had. It's very interesting how that works.
But that doesn't mean they found the truth, though.
I'm not saying I know what you're going to say.
So if somebody became more Catholic as a result of an ayahuasca trip, that's actually going the opposite direction that the Bible tells you. It tells you to get out of her, my people. And so if you're becoming more Catholic and saying, oh, you know what? I had this ayahuasca trip, and I realize now that the Eucharist is actually Jesus' body and blood. I feel so convicted about it. Then
no, let me clarify.
Obviously not.
Not that stuff. Meaning that they believe in God again.
Okay, I mean,
and whatever
that also has to be evaluated.
Whatever we can.
Because again, what do you mean by God? What do you mean by Christian? What do you mean by Jesus? What do you mean by all these things? People today say, like, again, the charismatics. I'll give you an example. The charismatics of today, which is going to be the tool to deceive the Middle East very soon, which is the charismatic movement. When they say, "Oh, I encountered Jesus. I went to this revival, and I was speaking in tongues," which really isn't biblical speaking in tongues. It's gibberish.
That's possession.
It's possession. Thank you.
Possession, brother.
Yeah, it's possession.
Out of those people,
they're having a demonic experience, but 100%. They're perceiving it with euphoria, light, the Holy Spirit, et cetera, et cetera. And so when people say, "Oh, the Holy Spirit did this," or "Jesus did this," it's like, I don't know. It doesn't look like what the Bible says.
Paul brought that. Paul brought the Holy Spirit.
No, he did not bring the speaking in tongues and
right. Paul, the Holy Spirit. Paul with Simon Magus.
Okay, yeah, Simon Magus was a false convert. What about him?
Okay, but he said that about Paul. Paul said that about him. And from what I understand, didn't most of the other apostles also kind of like accept Simon Magus? Paul was the only one against him at first.
No, the disciples. He was. It's, to be honest with you, when I read the parts about Simon Magus, I'm not clear if he was just a baby in the faith that was rebuked and eventually, the Bible doesn't say left or right.
That, faith for sure, because
he basically, made it, or was he a false convert? I'll be honest with you, I don't really know. But either way, it wasn't the apostles; it was the disciples. The disciples, meaning the people who were
yes,
believers. But they weren't like we're not talking like Peter and James were saying, "Oh, Simon Magus is it," and
Paul
endorsing Simon Magus.
A magic battle with him.
Well, it wasn't a magic battle. They were delivering demons, and I forget what the story exactly was, but Simon Magus was trying to do something and use money.
And Paul threw the Holy Spirit.
No, that's like Marvel comic stuff.
It's all.
No, it's not.
What do you mean? It's all. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. To me, it's all.
They weren't doing that though. It was about. I have to read the passage. I don't remember exactly. It was like raising the dead and healing people. And Simon Magus, I think, was trying to do things to make money, and that's why
he was already wealthy. That's why he tried to pay his way into the
right. That's right. He tried to pay his way into, and basically Paul was like, get out of here with that.
What are you trying to do? Middle Eastern Arab thing to do. Arabs are always trying. This is a very Arab methodology, bro. You pay your way in everywhere. It's the same thing now. What's wrong with that? It's what's the church. Guess what? How
people are doing it in the Christian churches too with the prosperity gospel.
Thank you. They're all doing it now. The wealthiest rabbis, the wealthiest preachers and the wealthiest rabbis have the wealthiest clients especially in America, because you can go and donate 50% of your federal taxes to a nonprofit religious organization. They can go buy the land and put the land underneath your name, and you can. I mean, the religious organizations of today are laundromats anyway. It's been like.
Well, you know what the Bible says, Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9, one of my favorite verses. There's nothing new under the sun.
That's Paul also. Right?
I don't think Paul said that specifically, but Ecclesiastes is Solomon. Solomon wrote that. King Solomon. Yeah, it's a great book. I think that's the most Zen book of the Bible. It's a great book.
I think King Solomon has one of the greatest stories ever written and ever. I mean, meaning he existed, but he with his life created one of the greatest stories and personifications ever. I think with a great lesson.
Yeah, he's an interesting character for sure.
With great lessons and great wisdom, and at the end,
the book of Proverbs is a wonderful book
at the end, and taught the lesson.
Yeah, he had 1,000 wives. They were all probably super hot, and he let his heart go the way of the world.
They say it was because of black magic, because he saw the one woman in his
father was probably some of that was involved.
He was getting in his sleep. It says in his sleep he couldn't stop dreaming about her, and the next day he went to the temple and asked her father, who was the high priest, and says, you have to make the sacrifice. And he says, I told you yesterday I can't make the sacrifice. And so then he brought like 5 bugs and said, hey, what if I do this? He said, great. As soon as he sacrificed those bugs, his connection went away. And then they say that after that is when the pagan temples were allowed to be built by his other wives and so on. The antithesis of that story was that Solomon actually allowed his various wives of the different Semitic tribes to build their temples to their other Elohim, because he understood the unification of the spiritual Israel in the aspect of the unified Elohim being honored at the same time to pierce the firmament with the unified kingdom. So you can go either way.
What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, Solomon in his infinite wisdom took wives from all of the different kingdoms, and not only that, but from around the world, the known world, right? That's why he had 1,000 wives. Right. But it started with the wives of married into the various kingdoms within Canaan, right? Those were his first wives, and that he allowed them to build their various temples to their gods, which their gods is called Elohim. And so he, in his infinite wisdom, realized that the way to have a unified kingdom was spiritually, and allowed all the Elohim of the land to be honored at the same time, in hopes that it would pierce the firmament and connect back to the oneness.
I don't think that sounds like, I don't think that's wisdom. I think that sounds like the Tower of Babel happening all over again, trying to
I would
get to God's domain without doing what God tells you to do. Which has been the moral of the story since the beginning.
No, but this is the same.
We're going back to Cain now, presenting as a worshiper, but trying to do it his own way.
Well, we can
instead of doing what God asked.
One perspective of Cain, I like to throw perspectives. One is that Cain, out of anger, grabbed the rock, killed Abel, thus he murdered him. He's guilty of murder. And then the other perspective was, if those were the first 2 people ever created on earth, how could Cain know that what he did to his brother was going to kill him? No one else has ever died.
I think that he would know, because they had animals. They were doing. I mean, farming.
You can punch someone as hard as you want, and they don't even get phased. And you can hit them, and you can feel the bone break on your knuckle, like through a glove, right? The same same amount of punch, right? It's a circumstance.
But you have to remember that people at that time, like Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, by extension being the second generation, Adam and Eve were perfect. They were brilliant people.
According to the story, they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden in less than 10 hours.
Well, all right. What I meant by that is physically perfect. They were physically, genetically perfect. They had very perfect bodies. They were the best of the best.
And so 1,000 years.
That's right. And so Cain was not stupid. They were very intelligent people, and he knew exactly what he was doing. And, he wanted to kill his brother because he was jealous. And that is the beginning of the two paths through space and time. The righteous servants that are doing what God says and they're suffering. And then there's the people who are ruling over the world who have the mark of Cain, who are the wicked, who are, by the way, pretending to be worshipers of God, and they're not. Synagogue of Satan.
The Synagogue of Satan, the New World Order.
Got a whole series on that, 25 hours. Plenty of things for people to dive into and conspiracies. But they're good.
They are. I haven't watched everything on your channel. I have watched quite a lot, which is part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation. As promised, this is more of a conversation, not a debate. But I think that the debate is I always say there's no such thing as comparative religion, because if you draw a line in the sand, then you have competitive religion, right? It's just the nature of the beast, proverbially speaking. But for me, I think that the importance is the distinct line is drawn, the die is cast, good and evil. And although your solution sounds real direct, and I know you're thinking it right now, well, the solution's simple. We have to do this and everything's going to be fine. Simultaneously,
it is simple.
No, I got you. And then simultaneously, I'm going to do an interview with the rabbis, and they'll say it's real simple. Boom. And the Muslims, it's real simple. And then we're going to bring everyone and be like, hey guys, this doesn't sound so simple if there's 4 different things we all have to do at the same time based off of biblical scriptures. You understand my complexity?
I understand for sure that somebody who is looking at all of these different perspectives and saying, you're all saying that you're the truth, so who is actually true in this room? I understand that perspective.
How can it's almost like we're all in a pool, and then you have like 3 different Abrahamic faiths, and everyone's in a pool and putting tape across the water and saying this is the special part of the water.
Well, it's more like there's one Abrahamic faith, which is Christianity, and then there are 2 little pools that are puddles outside of that pool that are saying, no, we're just like that pool. We belong and we get credit for all the water that's in that pool, but you're not. You're just a puddle.
There are Jews.
So my perspective is that the Abrahamic faith, the only Abrahamic faith, is the gospel. It's a continuation of the Old Testament, whereas the traditional Judaism is really just an offshoot, a rebellious offshoot to the Levitical religion, which was cemented after the temple was destroyed and the Jews continued to reject the gospel. And then Islam came later because the Arabs needed their own prophet. They wanted their own pope. They were not, like the Jews or the Christians, and so they were ripe for the picking. And of course, there's theories about how deep the Catholic Church goes in that particular direction. That's another conversation. But either way, the point is that the Jews the Judaism is a product of rebellion. It's not a continuation of the scriptures. Whew, choked on my own spit. It's not a continuation of the scriptures by any means, because the fundamental beliefs of Judaism are not in alignment with what the Israelites believed before Jesus. And the Muslims certainly aren't in consistency with the scriptures by any means. They claim they are, but they're not. So there is no Abrahamic faiths. There's only one Abrahamic faith, because those who believe the promise of the gospel, which is fulfilled in Christ, and the promise that God gave to Abraham is fulfilled in Christ, are children of the promise.
God promised Abraham as the father of nations, plural.
Right. And of course, God is spiritual, right? So he doesn't deal with just physical realities. So the ultimate promise of that is fulfilled in a reality where there are people from all tribes and tongues who are united in their faith and belief and trust in God. And that is the church. That is the church, the true church model, the true universal church, which of course the Catholic Church is a counterfeit of, but the true universal church is God reconciling all people to himself. It's the opposite of the Tower of Babel, where people were dispersed. God is bringing them together in himself, whether you're black or white or yellow or whatever else you are. God is bringing them to himself. There's no male or female. There's no divisions. We're all one in Christ Jesus. That's the message of the gospel. And that is how Abraham, by being the father of faith, because the Jews say, oh, we, like Jesus talked to the Pharisees, oh, well, our father is Abraham. And Jesus said, no, your father's the devil. Why does he say that? Because they're lizard people? No, because they are doing the works that the devil does, which is hate and murder and jealousy.
Well, maybe the specific ones he's speaking to are the Erevav.
Yeah, probably. But the point either way is that for God, when you talk about spiritual parentage in the Bible, when you mention things like father and son and daughter and stuff like that, it's often used in a spiritual meaning. So when Abraham is the father of many nations, yes, it's physically true. That is a physical fulfillment, obviously, but that's not all there is. The ultimate fulfillment of that prophecy finds itself in Abraham being the father spiritually by faith of all who would believe in God's promise, which is to redeem the world through himself, through Jesus. And so if you are believing in that promise, then you are a child of Abraham. If you are saying, oh, I'm related to Abraham, look, I have the certificates to prove it, but I reject Jesus, then you're not considered a child of Abraham, according to the scriptures.
You're jumping through a lot of time, though, because if you look at the actual promise and the actual words, the father of nations, he had Ishmael, which is Muhammad and the Muslims. He had Isaac and Jacob, right, which is the Jews, and then there goes Esau through the Christians. So, in essence, one way you could look at it just from like a chronological order, that his biblical prophecy, not his biblical, his covenant would be fulfilled in these various nations. And then the question one could ask the atheists, this is what they're going to say.
Sure.
Well, then isn't the problem that the concept of what you call God to create separation, and when you have 5.5 billion people, 8 billion people on earth believing one of these three faiths, and they all want to take it, blow up the world in the name of God, isn't that part of the problem? After all, didn't the ancient Babylonians say that there was a dark force that was over them, and they were trying to build this tower to connect directly to the Most High? And when they built the tower, then they said, this will not be the end of their meddlings. Come, let us confuse their language so they'll be at war. And then there we go. There's the creation, according to the Bible, of the various languages. So these are the things that are in the history that make it really hard for people. Once they dive deeply in, they uncover the beauty, but they also uncover, for example, the, sacrifice your child. Well, sacrifice my child or anyone's child. Like I wrote this one thing, and I believe it. It says, anything that asks me to kill one of my children is not God, for it's anything that asks me to take the life of another is not worthy of what's best in me.
Yeah, context is really important, though, because God is not you or me. God is a being that is beyond time and space. He's perfectly righteous. He's completely sovereign. So the way that he uses situations is not the way that we use situations. For example, in Genesis 50, verse 20, Joseph is reflecting with his brothers after the fact, after they've been rescued from the famine. This has been several years, on the issue that happened to bring him there in the first place, which is that his brothers wanted to kill him. They genuinely wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
And they attempted to kill him, but then they ended up sending him into slavery. And they are apologizing to him after realizing all this stuff. They're just repenting and coming clean. And he says, look, you meant it for evil. So that first layer is your intent was evil. You had no other intent but to do evil to me. Jealousy, right? God, sitting on top of the circle of the earth and being sovereign over all things, intended it for good. So there is an intent, there's an energy, there's a movement, there's a direction for every intent that we have. The profound revelation is that though his brothers intended something for evil, I'm going to go this direction, I'm going to kill him, I'm going to sell him into slavery, God is taking that sovereignly with his sovereign power and pointing it in this direction So that the evil that his brothers are doing are actually painting a future picture of Christ as a suffering servant, as a redeemer, redeeming hundreds of thousands of people from famine several years later, etc., etc., etc. So we are in no position to qualify and say, well, that what you did there, God, is evil, because you are not sovereign and you have no omniscience, you have not control over anything. And so ultimately we are not able to be the determiners of what is good or evil. That's the whole point. That's the lie from the beginning, is that you shall be like God, you knowing good and evil. You can decide what is good and evil. You are the authority over morality in your life. And that's not true. God is the authority. And that is a stumbling block for a lot of people, unfortunately.
No, but we know that murder is one of the worst things we can do. We have moral foundations.
You're right, but the difference is that God is also the judge of the earth. Now, the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament, where people get tripped up a lot because they think the Old Testament God is this evil God and Jesus is this different God, and of course the Gnostics have a lot to say about that. But the point is that it's not. God is God, and the difference between these two testaments is that in the Old Testament, God shared his judicial authority that he has over all living flesh with David, with Solomon, with all these different kings and powers to enact justice. The Canaanites, who were sacrificing their children, who were worshiping false gods, who were killing and murdering and having orgies and piling their sins up to heaven, were due for a judgment because they were evil and they were doing wicked things. God decided to pass judgment on them by appointing Joshua and everybody else in that position to enact justice and slaughter these people because judgment was coming upon them. Now, from your perspective as a human being, taking that out of context and saying, well, it's evil to kill a baby. Yes, it depends on the context. If God is enacting it as a judgment against these people and you are refusing to obey God, then therefore you believe that you are the one that determines what is morality and not God. And that is evil. So it's also a test of faith, which is why Saul was reprimanded, because he didn't do what he was supposed to do.
But the morality of taking the innocent life is part of the biblical moral code. And so
everything appears and tells you everything's in context.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, but we have to. So I have this writing. It says, think back to a time where there was no back in time. Think back to a time where there was no history, where there were no prophets and messiahs and no books of anything ever written. What would we do? What would you and I do?
Genesis 6 tells you what you would do.
Where would we base? But we would, inside of us, we would have a feeling of a moral justice and a foundational code.
Every thought of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord God regretted that he made man on the earth. No, mankind. Genesis 6. Within 7 generations? The man had become, by God, not restraining mankind.
And the 9, Noah's the 9th.
Yeah, Noah's the 9th. So it was 9 generations.
Yes, 9.
In 9 generations' time, mankind had become so corrupt that the Bible uses such superlative language that it never uses anywhere else. Only evil continually. Meaning every single thing that man was ever doing was so evil and wicked in only just a couple of generations, because God had let man do what man wants to do. Of course, there was always a select group like Enoch and Noah and people who God had chosen to maintain a relationship with. But the point is that was a revelation to show you that without God's restraining influence, mankind has no chance.
But if you calculate the time, if you calculate Adam 1,036 years, and you calculate all that, it was thousands of years. And then from that flood, and then it wasn't 9 generations sounds like a short amount of time, but if you calculate the biblical,
right, it's a lot of time
that they live was actually
they reproduced quite a lot too.
We are now.
Yeah, they reproduced a lot as well. Imagine if Eve had children. Let's say she lived to be 1,000 like Adam, because it doesn't say how long Eve lived, but let's say she lived to be 1,000, and she's fertile for 700 years or something, 800 years. I mean, that's insane. You have at least 50,000, 100,000 children. I mean, it's just crazy. And then all those children have the same amount of children. It's just mind blowing.
Do you believe how old is the world?
I don't believe the Masoretic timeline, which is that it's less than 6,000 years, because the Jews took about 700 years off of the patriarch genealogies in Genesis 11. But I do believe that the earth is, less than 7,000 years, maybe something like that. It's more than 6,000, but it's not 1 billion years old or 4 billion or whatever else. I don't believe
13.2 billion, or is that the universe?
Yeah. The universe is supposedly 13.2 billion, but it's like nonsense.
0.2 they go 0.2 to 0.6, like 0.2 to 0.6. Do you know how much?
Yeah, that's how many hundreds of millions of years. It's nonsense.
It's funny because I have a conversation, the conversation with the atheist on Monday, atheist philosopher, and I have his poem in my book. It says, knowing that the unknown is known to the one, this is how we know a God exists. As long as you understand that for something to exist in your atheistic mentality, worldview, that for something to exist, it has to be observed. And for something to exist, it has to have been created. So something's being created and continues, according to your science belief, that it has to be observed for it to continue to exist, which means that everything has to be observed at the same exact time for it to exist. And you don't believe in a supreme creator? Like, what is the concept of just randomness, like that everything?
Yeah, it's not possible. It's not the idea that everything came from nothing spontaneously without a cause is perhaps the most absurd thing you could possibly have. I think it takes more faith to be an atheist, to be honest with you. I don't have the kind of faith to be an atheist.
Well, there's hope.
My faith is based on evidence. I don't have the faith to be an atheist. Atheists believe all kinds of crazy things.
They do, but you have no problem. You're ready for that debate, right, Tudor?
I guess,
Are you ready?
The thing is, atheism is not a rational position. It's a religion of its own. And the atheist is always going to make the argument of, show me proof. Well, proof is subjective. There's a lot of evidence I could show you. You could go walk outside. The Bible says in Romans chapter 1 that the proof for God's existence has always been available in what he's made, so that nobody is without excuse. That when you walk outside in nature and you're looking at the bees and the flowers and the water and everything else, that you realize, you know what? There's a greater intelligence that made all this. That is embedded into your conscience.
It's beyond
so
obvious.
It's beyond obvious. So the question is,
a little too obvious.
If that evidence doesn't satisfy you, then you're not in a rational position. So no amount of evidence can satisfy an atheist.
Science, and then they say physics, and then they say, okay, well.
But you know what they believe? They believe a counterfeit version of science, because the science that people believe today with cosmology, with heliocentric cosmology, is a product of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church weaponized through the Jesuits. Look it up. All the moon craters have Jesuits on them. The inventor of the Big Bang was a Jesuit. The first people to calculate the gravitational constant, quote unquote, and they still don't know what that is because they're measuring it all over the place. They don't even know what the hell they're measuring. The first people to calculate it were Jesuits. The Jesuits are all over heliocentric cosmology, and there are plenty of actual experiments that have been hidden under the rug that have proven the Earth is motionless, the Earth is flat. Now, how the system looks like, I can't tell you. I think it's a mystery. Personally, I think it's an infinite plane that repeats itself, maybe in some sort of, kind of like a video game, and God is on top of it, and he sees it in like a three-dimensional sense. But who knows? The point is, we're not spinning on a ball in space, at hundreds of thousands of miles an hour and all this nonsense. That is a dialectic designed to bring the world into a one-world situation through things like, oh my gosh, the aliens are coming. Oh my gosh, the meteors are coming. Oh, you can travel through space and live forever. Look, we're going to Mars. We're doing this. All of this stuff is just fakery designed to dangle carrots in front of you and deceive you. It's deception. So the real cosmology leads you back to the truth, which is God. The fake cosmology leads you to, all the other counterfeits.
In my book that I wrote nearly 12 years ago now, there's a chapter 8, it says Science, the Religion of Modern Man. Because
science is the religion of modern man.
I really wish I put it out pre-COVID, because it was like, oh, we're so smart.
That would have been good timing.
I wish I put it out before COVID. It's still on, but don't know where I have a plan, or I'm a part of a bigger plan. But
that's a better way to state it.
It's the truth. One aspect of science is creating a telescope, right? So we can stare off into space, and we keep making better telescopes. And what do we see? We see more space. Can you imagine? There's a Milky Way, then there's more than we see. That, oh my God.
But they don't even know what they're looking at. They could be looking at things in the firmament and saying, oh, it's 1 billion miles away.
They do, because look, we have like galaxies, and 10 galaxies together. There's a cluster, then a super cluster. And by the way, then there's like clusters of superclusters, about 100 of them. And then now there's 100 trillion galaxies, right? And there's going to be more and more and more. Simultaneously, on the other side of the science, they go, you fools, you're looking out there for what we can find here. By here, they mean the earth. So now we create a microscope, and then we see an atom. And then what do we see when we see an atom? Oh my God, inside of the atom is another universe, and then more. And meanwhile, the question I ask these fools, what exactly are you searching for? And the answer is God. That's what you're searching for, isn't it? You're trying.
Well, science was supposed to lead you to God. Unfortunately, science has become atheistic to lead people away from God, to try to explain what they see without the presence of God. And that's why it's a problem.
The original, like the father of modern science, Sir Isaac Newton, he was an alchemist, right? So he was
yeah.
Things, and he had a faith. That's obviously true. And then
I don't know if he was a born again Christian. I doubt it, but
that's not the only.
He was definitely involved in the occult. That's well documented.
He was involved in the occult, and he was involved in ancient mysteries, and I think.
You know what year he discovered his apple falling from the tree?
Let's see. It was 17.
Nope, a little bit earlier.
1680.
1666. 666. Nice little number.
And 666. Let's see. And have you looked up the mark of the beast? The mark of the beast is coming.
Oh yeah. Mark of the beast is coming, but it's not what people think. It's not a chip or a jib jab or transhumanism or AI or all this stuff that people believe. It's a spiritual thing. The mark of the beast is you're taking on the mark, the character of the papal power upon you, which is rebellion to God, and it's going to be mandated Sunday legislation, Sunday laws, resting on Sunday, because that is the counterfeit of the Sabbath. And the Sabbath, if you understand what the Sabbath means to God and to the plan of salvation, the Sabbath is a physical demonstration of the plan of salvation. We are entering God's rest every week.
Jesus said God created the Sabbath for man, not the man for Sabbath.
Absolutely, but that doesn't mean that, hey, I gave you this fourth moral commandment, which is an eternal commandment, just like not killing or not stealing.
Oh, no, I'm agreeing with you with the change. I'm agreeing with the exact intention of
what... Yeah, like if God's going to make something for you, are you going to say, oh, no, I don't need that?
Oh, no, I'm saying
I don't need to rest mindfully one day a week. That's not for me.
For the inversion without a question. That's beyond.
Oh, absolutely, and the Catholics are very clever about it. They'll cite all kinds of things, but the reality is everybody who wrote the Bible kept the Sabbath, and the early Christians kept the Sabbath. In fact, up until the year 383 with Theodosian, which was after the Sunday laws passed by Constantine, which weren't as strict in the beginning, but eventually they got very strict. And how we know that is because Christians were told, don't Judaize. Do not Judaize, meaning do not keep the Sabbath on Saturday, otherwise you're going to be shut out from Christ, meaning kicked out of the church.
Yes.
And of course, you know what happens to people who are called heretics. So we know that people were keeping the Sabbath up until the 4th century easily because they were told not to Judaize. Otherwise, that wouldn't be the case. So the Catholic Church has had its mark, and it's boasted of its mark of authority to change the times and laws, which is a direct fulfillment of the prophecies in Daniel of the little horn coming and changing God's times and laws. The Catholic Church has changed the calendar. It's changed the laws of God. The 10 Commandments of the Catholics are different than the actual 10 Commandments. They got rid of the commandment on images, and they split the last commandment into 2 commandments to make up for it. And they changed the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday, to the first day of the week. And people don't know that because Protestantism is just a harlot daughter of Rome. And Protestantism today is so infiltrated by secret society members and Jesuit operatives that it's become incredibly ecumenical. That's why I said the charismatic movement is going to be how they are going to unite all of these religions into one spiritual experience. Charismatic experience.
Different outfits for the harlot, huh?
Yeah, different outlets, but they're all they're all daughters. The mother harlot's going to have all her daughters back, so you need to get out of institutional religion.
Oh, I'm not.
Because
I'm not.
Oh, I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you. I know you're not a member of an institutional religion, but I'm just saying for anybody listening
if I was, this would be a total Jesuit move, by the way. This would be a masterful Jesuit play. But
it would be masterful. Yeah, very well done.
Level, except for the difference is that no one says how you know that I'm not and I know you're not, because no one ever says Jesuits. That's the one thing no one ever
nobody
said.
talks about them too
Alex
much.
Jones in his mouth never one time has said
That's how you know who's
That's how
paying
you
his
know
bills.
for sure
That's how you know.
who knows and who's telling the absolute truth. Because the interesting part,
Yeah.
that as far as the Catholic Church was concerned, all you have to do is you just look at some historical figures. Go look at Abraham Lincoln, Adolf Hitler, several popes, and so on. And when you see that they say that the Jesuits are the evil on the earth, all those that's how you know for sure they're onto something. And when you see, for example, when you say that to be a Catholic pope, for example, even within their system, they you have to be a man, right? They check. You have to be like a Catholic, right? And then you have to be like a minimum of like an archbishop, I believe, or a position of a certain
cardinal, I think. Yeah,
a cardinal. And then the last thing it has to be is you're not allowed to be a Jesuit.
Of course,
you're not allowed to, except for now, the Black Pope is the Pope for the first time ever.
Right.
The entire history of like 1700 years of the Catholic Church, the Black Pope is the Pope. Have you heard of the Saint Malachi's prophecies?
I have, yeah, and how this is supposedly the second to last one.
Peter Romanus.
Yeah, was the one more after him.
Well, here's the thing. They was 100. I think there was 116 because there's also the same. I think it's like 116 or maybe 116 is Gospel of Thomas sayings of Jesus and Gospel. I can't remember. 116, something like this. But the last one they said was Peter Romanus. The difference was they didn't figure out whether he started with the one that was currently the Pope or if he named the first one to be the next one. But the last one, when I saw the last Pope Heinzinger and I saw him and his not, I was like, wow, that guy looks like, he looks like the black, if I was going to paint a face of a person who would look like the evil Pope, Heinzinger, the last guy, looked like him.
Yeah.
But then realized he wouldn't look like
he was the Grand Inquisitor too. So that was interesting.
It's a very interesting part. But then when this guy took over, this new Pope, then you're like, oh, wow, this guy seems to be the one, especially with all his like satanic, all his like parade, all the stuff he's got going on.
Oh, he's the destroyer, but his role is to basically liberalize it so everybody swings back to hardcore Catholicism afterwards. So he's almost done. They're going woke with this whole Jubilee year, and that's going to make so many people froth at the mouth for a reform situation.
Have you seen the room that has all like the wooden effigies that looks like, I suppose it's like Jesus visiting hell?
Oh yeah, that's gosh, what's that? I think it's called Resurrection by Fazzini.
Yeah,
at the mouth of the serpent.
Yeah, that's
the Antichrist spirit rising from the ashes of world destruction, and the man of sin speaking from the mouth of the snake. I mean, come on, anybody with some discernment can see that.
So that has nothing to do with the Jesus you're speaking of.
Definitely not. Definitely. It has to do with Jesus in the sense that Jesus will destroy that system when he returns. But
anybody who destroys that infrastructure and liberates and cleanses that place of all the sin and deceit that's been cast upon the earth for 1700 years would be doing a good deed.
Yeah, and the only person who can do that is Jesus Christ.
So you don't think
because this system is the power of the devil, and the devil is the god of this world.
You don't think you can? You don't have the power to do it.
No. My role, like anybody else who knows the truth, is to participate in God's plan through living one day at a time and acting on what I believe, acting on what God has given me, whether that's resources or time or knowledge, and sharing the truth. I realize that I can't convince anybody. At the same time, I have to speak the truth because I believe that when God gives you knowledge, he doesn't give it to you to sit on your hands. I believe that God gives knowledge to people to do something with it. And whether that means starting a YouTube channel or just going to your local church and talking to the people around you, your family and friends, it doesn't matter. The point is that we take action on God's plan for our life because God says, vengeance is mine. God is the one who will have vengeance. God is the one who will have justice. God is the one who will resurrect and redeem us. So the profound freedom that comes with being a Christian in the truest sense of the word is that you are not responsible for the outcome, and yet you can participate in the outcome and with full assurance that it's going to happen. That is the freedom that comes with true Christianity, because Christianity gives you a new way of being that you can do new things. You are not chasing that new way of being through actions. Whereas every other position, whether it's Judaism, Muslims, atheism, political nationalism, whatever, the occult, they all operate on the fundamental deception of free will, and that means that you must do something, otherwise the outcome is not going to happen. Whereas God has predetermined the outcome for his glory, and you are being wrapped up in that outcome. And yes, you are participating, but that's the dance of life. That's why I named my podcast The Dance of Life.
Yeah.
It's the dance. It's there. Where do you draw the line between two people dancing? You know, two people that are having a moment, a very intimate, not like sexual, but just, you know, like an intimate moment of dancing and playing with each other and going to the music and everything. Where do you draw the line between that? I don't know. Where do you draw the line between Jesus being God and man? I don't know. You can't.
I can tell you where you draw the line. You can draw the line. For me, on that one, you can say Jesus as the prophet. You could say Jesus as the Messiah. There's the line. Jesus as human.
Well, Jesus of Nazareth is a human being that was born in time and space, but Jesus of Nazareth lives right now in heaven, and he's returning because Jesus of Nazareth is also the incarnate Son of God.
Yeah. I'm just saying that you asked where you can draw, and I was telling you exactly where I can draw the line. I could accept it as a human and as a prophet and as a Messiah who died and left a message. And that's why I personally draw the line, for sure, because in where I don't worship, but I also simultaneously don't worship or pray to any man that has ever lived nor ever will live. Personally, I would look at them as prophets and messiahs and messengers of good and bad, by the way. And with that, I'm able to look at the ancient history and ancient religions and understand the stories of all 26 Buddhas, and look at all of the messengers of the Abrahamic religions, you know, from the Old Testament, New Testament, and look at the stories of in Islam and so on, and just take the, as you said it, you say swallow the meat and spit out the bones.
Yeah. But the thing is, they all contradict each other. What Jesus says and what Muhammad says are two different things. And so the question is, are you going to pick and choose your own flavor of spirituality? Because Jesus says very exclusive things. You have to, John 14:6 says, there's no way to the Father unless you go through me. I am the door. So that's a very exclusive statement. And
I don't know if Jesus actually said that.
He did.
According to
John 14:6.
Yeah.
John was a firsthand eyewitness. And if you're going to say that, well, I don't know he said that, then you have no basis to believe anything about Jesus. Because the place that we learn about Jesus from the most is the Gospels that were written and the letters that were written about him from firsthand eyewitness testimony.
About him the most? The Gospel of Thomas.
Yeah, but that's a Gnostic gospel. That's not the right Jesus.
Not Gnostic.
That's not the Jesus of the Gospels.
Brother, we have to draw a distinct line. The concept of Gnostic was a derogatory term utilized by Irenaeus and these other people, these early church fathers. So I reject all the church fathers and all their what's right and wrong across the board from the beginning.
I'm not saying the church fathers were right about everything, but Gnosticism is not a derogatory term. It refers to a particular discipline of essentially saving yourself through knowledge.
Jesus was talking about the inner message within all the stuff that you're talking about in your
Jesus said, repent or perish. Every one of his messages was about repentance. It wasn't about, here's the knowledge that you need to take, and you can do all these things and be like God. No, the message of, it's not my worldview. That's what the Gospels say.
I'm saying
the Gospels, the four Gospels that were written are earlier than the Gospel of Thomas. Therefore, they are the predominant source to refer to.
I'm saying in your worldview, if you go back, you have found and you have accepted a lot of prophecies that add up to prophetic Messiah, who in fact you believe is also God, right? You're drawing from Old Testament, so you're saying these are prophetic for what's to come, what's to come, what's to come. That view, that lens, that would be a Gnostic lens you're looking at, and that's good.
No, it's not.
Well,
it's not Gnostic at all.
Of beyond the, like, looking at this and seeing the water and understanding the inside of this water can be a blessing or a curse, right?
But looking at Bible prophecy and matching it to history with hard evidence is not reading the Bible Gnostically. I'm not reading esoteric metaphors and all these things from those prophecies. No, those prophecies are
hidden. Esoteric is different because esoteric is a hidden message. Like
right. There's no hidden message or secret metaphor, or how basically the rabbinic Jews read the Bible today through their Kabbalah. I'm not reading it that way. I'm just reading, what does the prophecy say? Okay, it says 490 years, beginning with 457 BC. That starts in 27 AD. What does the Gospel of Luke say? It timestamps that exact time, and Jesus was about 30, and we know from other places that he was born in 3 BC. So all those things check out. But so those things are hard facts. They're not like Gnostic or esoteric or metaphorical or symbolical spiritual things.
Yeah, but the definition of Gnostic from the Gnosis perspective is the emphasis on like the
knowledge,
the secret knowledge. And so in essence,
right,
in your perspective, you're saying that Jesus appeared, he never directly explained. Jesus didn't explain the Trinity. It was defined later and explained later, which would be by in and of itself a secret meaning inside of the life and times.
It's not secret because God reveals. Jesus said, "I have said nothing in secret." So God revealed himself in the person of Jesus, and Jesus revealed God's nature, God's character. Jesus also was worshipped as God. He is God. He claimed to be God multiple times. He was revered as God by the apostles. Now you have a real...
That part, I'm going to push back on that. I don't have any biblical
on what?
On that. I don't believe he was revered as God or recognized as God or said he was God in real time.
John says he is God, John 1:1-3, John 1:18. Paul says he's God, Romans 9:5, Titus 2:13. Peter says he's God, literally exactly calling Jesus God, 2 Peter 1:1. Thomas, John 20:20, exclaims, "My Lord and my God." Jude says that Jesus was basically the one in the desert escorting the Israelites, but actually if you read the book of Exodus, it's the angel of Yahweh. So obviously Jude understood that there was an eternal aspect to Jesus, not just a physical aspect. So all of the people who wrote the New Testament were in complete agreement that Jesus is God. Paul says that the Christ is God above all. Well, there's no other God. But then you have situations where Jesus...
The question is that they recognize that after his death, because I would never, for example,
sure, yeah.
I believe...
After he came back from the dead, I think they recognized it.
Okay, that's a good point. Because I was about to say, if I even thought someone was a holy prophet behind me, I'm gonna put myself in front of that bullet, so to speak. And I know you would too. You would never let a prophet get taken.
If Jesus had just died,
but that's what the real problem. The Muslims say that Jesus was not actually on the cross and another.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my point.
But that's why it's Antichrist. But the point, Antichrist doesn't...
Tudor, one question for you.
Antichrist just means against Christ.
There's a Muslim right here. You're going to keep this saying, this is you, right? This is... Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I have nothing to hide. It's just...
Yeah. See, I don't.
The definition of Antichrist that I use is the definition provided by John in his letters, which is against Christ. It's a spirit that is warring against Christ. So a spirit...
Can Muhammad be against Christ when he believes that Jesus is the Messiah and will return?
But he doesn't believe that Jesus is the payment for sins. He denies that Jesus is God. He denies that Jesus died on the cross. That doesn't mean that he believes that the Jesus of the gospel.
The Jesus not dying on the cross component, I guess you could say, is somewhat mystical. That his soul, that meaning that the meaning behind that for them is that Jesus, that no man would be have the ability to take the life of this like his soul was saved because of the righteousness, and he actually was not.
Yeah, they're philosophical gymnastics, but at the end of the day.
But yeah, no, they don't believe Jesus was God, and that's also because they don't believe the Messiah was supposed to be God according to Jewish prophecy. That's the thing.
Well, by the time that Muslims came around, the Jews had already corrupted the scriptures, so you can't blame them in some sense, right? I mean, ultimately they had the access to a couple of writings, and by then all these Masoretic corruptions were making their way. They're making their rounds, and of course, Muhammad was a false prophet. I'm happy to say that. I'll tell you what I
do believe. I'll tell you something that I do believe. I believe that if we are to believe that the descendants of Abraham in the form of Isaac, Jacob, and then inevitably and eventually Moses, if that word is a word as a part of that covenant, then I also simultaneously believe that the covenant of Muhammad through Ishmael through Abraham, I look at them as kind of the same thing.
What do you mean?
Like, meaning that I look at the 5 books of Moses specifically and Muhammad's Quran, which is his message from the Archangel Gabriel, and I put them in the same category.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I believe that they were in some aspect divine.
They contradict each other, so.
And so does the existence of 2 chosen people for one land. Yes, it's all. There's a lot of contradictions. Is the problem? But you know, the beautiful part about it, and I hope we can all land there one day, is that when Abraham dies, according to the story, that when he was being buried in Hebron, Ishmael and Isaac embraced and buried their father together.
It's a beautiful message. It's not in the Bible, I don't think. So, well, whether it's true or not,
the Jews and Muslims both believe it. I don't know where it is written or not written.
It could also be a false thing that was written to bring the Jews and Muslims together to convert at the end of the age, which is what the devil wants. So
it's an interesting twist. You have a lot of twists.
I'm just saying, I know that the Muslims and Jews have to be converted, so it wouldn't strike me that something that is written outside of the Bible about this future prosperity of reuniting this dialectic and synthesis from the thesis and antithesis between these 2 groups, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, could it have actually happened? It's possible. It's a nice story. Could it also be a false sign and wonder to basically feed this ecumenical agenda?
Well, it hasn't. But it hasn't affected. It hasn't affected.
Oh, for sure, it hasn't affected up until now.
I hold that more than like I'm probably holding on to that as a better than them. You know, like it hasn't affected anything.
It'll happen. Other than, give it like, I don't know, 5 years, maybe something like that. It'll happen.
Well, we'll see. Tudor, I really appreciate your time. I know it's late, and I had a great conversation with you, and I look forward to it. And
sure, it's a lot of fun.
Looking forward to seeing you again on a one-on-one conversation, as well as in the debate aspect. This is going to be a really fun,
sure,
a fun path, and I'll be going more towards like a moderator aspect here. And I'm looking forward to it, my brother. We're going to have on the channel. We're going to have a lot of things. I have interviews coming up over the next like 2 weeks, and then we're going to have that debate panel situation. And I know you're equipped. One last thing, the cross to you.
Yeah.
What does the cross mean to you?
The cross to me is a symbol. It's a simple symbol of something very profound.
Okay.
I think that Jesus, from the evidence that I've looked at, was crucified on an actual T-shaped cross like the one on my hat.
Sure.
Not a stake like the Jehovah's Witnesses say. I think the evidence is not in favor of that.
I think we all know that the cross was the punishment for capital punishment for Rome.
Yeah, and there were a lot of different kinds of crosses. There were X's, there were, T-shaped capital T crosses. So there were different kinds of crosses. But I think given all the evidence biblically, Jesus was crucified on a lowercase t type of cross. So that's a historical thing that happened. It was prefigured in the Old Testament with the tribes of Israel around the tent of witness, where you had if you actually look at people have done this, which is really interesting. They've graphed out how many tribes were around the tent of witness, and it actually forms the shape of a cross, which is interesting because the Ark of the Covenant was a symbol of basically God coming down into earth through Jesus Christ. So very interesting. So anyway, the cross as a spiritual symbol to me represents the reconciliation of dualities that is so profound, because the vertical line represents God, because when God says, how much higher are my ways than your ways?
Okay.
Right? As the sky is high from the earth, that's how different I am from you. And you look at the sky, you're like, man, that's infinite. Pretty far up there. Yeah, infinite for all we know. Jacob's ladder. And of course, Jesus is Jacob's ladder, and he appropriated that to himself. But the point is that that's how high God's ways are. And then so you have this vertical element that is not transcendable between the ground and heaven. And then you have the horizon line, which represents the earth, because anywhere where you go, you just look at the horizon, it's flat. You go up on the Mount Kilimanjaro, it's flat. You go sea level, it's flat. It's always rising to meet your eye level, which proves to you it's It's one of the most simplest proofs of what shape the Earth is. That the fact that the horizon rises to meet your eye level. That does not happen on any size of a ball. Doesn't matter how big the ball is, because the horizon is always falling away from you. So the fact that the horizon is flat represents this infinite plane that we live on as created beings. So you have the intersection.
Let me interject something real quick. Have you heard of Petra in the Wadi Rum deserts of Jordan? Petra. It was the ancient Nabatean kingdom.
It sounds familiar. Yeah.
It's one of the most miraculous and amazing places you can ever imagine seeing. All over Jordan, because all those prophecies happen in Jordan, in Midian, Moab, pointing at Israel. They didn't happen in Israel. They happen in these deserts. And when you are traveling anywhere through the Wadi Rum, or which means Valley of High Places, or the Wadi Musa, which is the Valley of Moses, where Aaron's buried, for example, is near Petra. It's like you can see the location. And along all these mountains, you see straight lines in all the mountains, right? And if you pull up your phone, you can see that this is obviously water line. So you can see clearly, without question, there was a flood. Without obvious question, there was an entire flood. How do we know? Let's see. You can tell where the lines are thicker. There are doorways cut into the mountain. So there was civilization staying for long enough to cut in the mountain. And then down, all the way to the masterpiece, which is the Petra, which is like a city carved into a mountain.
Yes, I think I've seen that before. That's fascinating.
Everywhere. The mountains have perfect lines where the water level. Continue with the horizon.
Yeah. So for me, the cross represents the profound realizations that we find in the gospel, which is the integration of these two opposites that seem completely irreconcilable. You have God, who is just and holy, and you have man, which is sinful and imperfect and, dying. And in Jesus Christ, they are intersecting, because God and man intersect. In Jesus Christ, you have justice and mercy, which are two absolutes that are seemingly irreconcilable, especially with an absolute being. You have, sin and righteousness. You have life and death all intersecting. So to me, the cross is not only a simple symbol of historically what happened that everybody recognizes, but also spiritually, all these things are reconciled in Jesus so beautifully. They really are. I think it's a profound thing.
So to you, it's more of the metaphysical meaning of the cross, is not the actual physical component.
I definitely think that there's a lot of poetic and metaphysical meaning to the cross. I think there's nothing wrong with seeing that, because ultimately there are many symbols prefigured of the cross. Now I'm not talking about the solar cross, which is the Templar cross, which would be, something with equilateral, like the kinds that the popes use on their little Templar
the cross
robes.
Of Cain?
Yeah, I don't know what that looks like.
It's got two lines. The Orthodox use it too.
Yeah, it's like basically like both of the lines are equal distance.
Oh, got it.
Whereas this cross has a long, denoting that this is a vertical orientation. Whereas
the Templar cross, the Jerusalem cross, the even one.
Yeah, the Jerusalem cross, right?
The Crusader cross.
That's their solar sun cake.
Cross.
Pete Hegseth has a lot of Catholic paraphernalia on his body.
Well, no, it's not even. It's the Jerusalem cross, which is the Crusader cross. The Orthodox cross, which is the double, which is the cross of Cain. So you combine those two, you have the lines on the end. So it goes like this, and then there's these. So you have to. I have decoded the sigils and the symbolisms of these things.
Oh, they love all that stuff. It's all part of the sun worshipping religion.
There's power in it. That's why for dark magic. That's the problem.
For sure. Yeah, the Jesuits. Would Helena Blavatsky say that the Jesuits are the singular organization on earth that has used more black magic than anybody in history? And that's a Satanist telling you that. 32nd degree Freemason Satanist telling you that.
Well, Hitler said the same thing about the Jesuits. So did Abraham Lincoln, I believe.
He modeled his SS on the Jesuits. Or Himmler said that he modeled the SS around the Jesuits, I think. One of them said that.
Yeah, Himmler.
But the cross as it is a simple symbol, is just a simple reminder, without being too trendy, of something very historical and also something very profound, which is the gospel.
You hold it as a metaphysical symbol and a metaphysical reminder, not necessarily, because that's part of the. I ask people all the time. I say, well, if Jesus was killed by firing squad, would you would you cry about a gun? Or if you, but the metaphysical aspect, I can totally, I like, my organization has a triquetra to symbolize the above and below and so on. So yeah, okay. So that's the idea of like having, because the Catholics with the body on the cross and then eating the flesh and drinking, it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, the crucifix thing
you would say it was more
the cross is not the crucifix. Crucifix is very different.
Crucifix is the one with Catholic.
Yeah, crucifix is basically a sculpture of Jesus suffering on the cross.
That's called a crucifix.
Yeah, that's called a crucifix.
I thought the crucifix was the cross. Okay, so I learned something today on this one.
Cross is just a symbol. I mean, it's just this is three nails that form, a cross. It's just a simple cross. And again, that's got historical value, and also I think it's a symbol of the gospel in a very beautiful way. But a crucifix is an actual image. It's an image of Jesus suffering on the cross, and people kiss it and they bow down to it, and
that's paganism, correct?
Yeah, I would say that's
idolatry, correct?
Baptized paganism.
That's pure idolatry.
Yeah.
Well, we agree. Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you would bring if you bring David or Moses or Paul or Peter or John, and you bring them back to life and you show them modern Orthodox or Catholic religious processions where they're carrying a statue of Mary and they're carrying it around and people are bowing down or going to pilgrimages and kissing these things. And it's like, what do you think the people who wrote the Bible would think about that?
Moses would take the staff and he would bring lightning and a flood. He'd bring a flood on him.
Yeah,
Jesus would flip the table more than the money changers.
Yeah.
And for
it's sad.
I stand the same way as well for that. That's the interesting part. That's all crazy idolatry. And the interesting part, that's why the prophet of Islam, Muhammad, said you're not allowed to depict God or any of his prophets. And he said it's a sin to try to draw God, draw Jesus, or draw him. And the interesting part is, after he died, what they did is that's why Muslims act so against any drawing Muhammad. And that, by the way, they're the same with any of the prophets, but specifically Muhammad more than anything, of course, which is Muhammad said any of them equal, right? And so the funny part about it is instead of drawing or depicting Muhammad, what they'll do is they'll take the prayers, and Islamic calligraphy is so beautiful. So they'll write the prayers in this beautiful calligraphy. And
they do have nice calligraphy.
It's stunning. And then they'll kiss that just like anything else. It's like
that's okay. Kissing a statue is wrong, but kissing some calligraphy is all right.
No, but it's with the same. It's the same energy to me. To me, it's the same concept.
Oh, for sure it is. Yeah, and the Kaaba. I mean, the Kaaba is one of the greatest pagan rituals of today. People circling around a giant black cube.
You're saying like it's like the black box of Saturn?
Yeah, I would think so.
Is that some say it was a meteorite?
Yeah. Well, we know that the firmament isn't getting. Now, could there be things that fall from the firmament? It's possible. I'm willing to entertain that idea, but either way, it's not some rock from, billions of years in space. And even if it was a piece of the firmament, the fact that people are worshiping this thing and paying homage to a physical thing around a black cube.
What if the Ark of the Covenant's in there?
The Ark of the Covenant was a physical thing that was designed to point to Jesus. Now that Jesus has been revealed, God in the flesh, who is supernaturally present in physical form, these physical things are done away with.
But even if even if what you say is true, then that would mean that still the original commandments etched in stone would still have the same value they did even after Jesus's.
I mean, it would be cool to find such a thing, but knowing what I know about Scripture, knowing what I know about what God has revealed, God knows that the human heart tends towards evil, that the human heart is very quick to idolize and to make idols out of things. And so
that's true.
The entire, I don't think, like the whole thing with the Shroud of Turin, my gosh, that's another.
Yeah, the Shroud of Turin is.
I have debated so many people about this.
I don't understand why people are confused.
It's a fake, man. It's just
carbon dated for the exact time period that Jacques de Molay was alive. He was the last grand prior of the Templars. he cursed the Pope and the King of France. Both of them died within a year, and that's why Friday the 13th. And the shroud was carbon dated in the 90s for like 1290s, the exact time that the guy was.
Yeah, it was a range. It was like 1290 to 1360
that's
or something.
That's the exact time period where the entire Jacques de Molay finale happened.
Yeah, I mean, the Catholic Church is famous for its forgeries. But anyway, the point is, that's a whole nother can of worms. I don't believe the shroud is genuine, but the point is that people are like so quick to say, oh, look, it's Jesus. Well, how do you know it's Jesus? I don't think Jesus, if we know that the God of the universe spent thousands of years building up context to this momentous occasion of entering reality and revealing himself, I don't think that he would do a 180 from that and give you physical things to idolize and say, oh, look, that's Jesus. And now we can do AI reconstruction and see what he looked like. And we can make pictures. And pretty soon people can bow down this at pilgrimages, or having AI Jesus confessionals like they did with the whole thing recently in, was it Switzerland? Was it Switzerland? Somewhere in Europe.
Silly.
The AI Jesus confessional. You could go in and talk to Jesus as an AI program. I'm serious. I'm dead serious.
This is, are you, I'm going to look this up.
But the thing is, the Catholic Church is doing a lot of these types of experiments now with AI and spirituality, because this is the new thing. I mean, they're going to
the Lucifer telescope.
Yeah. Oh, it's named luminescent, uranium, whatever
acronym. They made up.
You could have picked so many different acronyms, and then you picked this one. Come on. And by the way, they also lobbied to place that particular telescope, because I live in Arizona, and there's a mountain here around Tucson called Mount Graham, which was sacred land to all these pagan Indians, because they would go there and they would supposedly commune with, the spirit world. And okay, whatever. I don't deny that. That doesn't mean they weren't doing that. But why was the Vatican so insistent on lobbying to get that site for their telescope?
Because
they could have gone so many places to build a telescope, but no, they had to crush these Indians so they could use their sacred portals site and build this Lucifer telescope.
They wanted to bring it close to you.
No, well, it's not super close, because Phoenix is still a good 2 hours or something from Tucson. But
the Lucius Trust,
Lucius Trust, yeah,
Lucifer, Alice Bailey, the Lucifer telescope.
They're all one peas in the pod. I mean,
but before it was a conspiracy. Remember when the Illuminati was a conspiracy, and now it's on Wikipedia.
I think the Illuminati has been disbanded, but that doesn't change the fact that the world is ruled by secret societies.
No, the Illuminati.
Because now everybody talks about the Illuminati. They're just a low-hanging fruit. People don't.
They've they're just like the Jesuits. They were created to do a specific job, and then
for sure, yeah.
And the Illuminati is the same thing. The Illuminati was infiltrated through Masonry. Masonry's rise was through the Illuminati.
Yeah, they cross-pollinated with each other.
Masonry was pretty much a good old boy for the most part. I mean, they had little wild beliefs, but all that stuff about Hiram Abiff and all that's all Illuminati stuff. That was all injected into Masonry.
Yeah, but you know what? There's a lot of stuff that the operant Freemasons, before the Templars mixed with them after running away from being persecuted and meeting up in Kilwinning or wherever they met up, and they kind of fused operant Masonry with speculant Freemasonry. The operant Masons, there's a lot of stuff connecting them to the Jews that ran away from the temple being destroyed. And even the Templars, believe it or not, there's a lot of stuff connecting the original Templars, at least, to the elite Jewish families that were running away from, the judgment in 70 AD and the other revolutions, and basically coming up to Europe and, basically interbreeding and whatever else. So it's interesting how both sides of the Freemasonry, I'm not saying this has anything to do with the average Jewish person.
No.
But Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah and things like that were embedded on both sides, both
You're
operant.
Talking about Herod's bloodline. Because Herod was considered.
I'm not sure.
Herod
maybe
took power because of his bloodline.
Herod was an Edomite, right? So I mean,
exactly. But
I don't know if he was the only exclusive one.
Well, the temple, because Solomon's temple. I think it was the Solomon's temple. To build it, he got the king of Tyre, and king of Tyre sent his people. Hiram was one of those people, and they were the ones that designed it. And that's modern day Lebanon. And they said after that they buried them in there to keep the mysteries and the secrets in there, right? And so
that's the spin on it.
That's the spin on it, of course. So the mystery is missing, right? But that bloodline, that same bloodline still exists. And look, you can, the idea that people think bloodlines don't exist. I mean, if you can go watch a video right now where the current King Charles of England brags about being a direct descendant of Vlad the Impaler, which is Dracula.
Oh, they love their bloodlines. The elites are all about their bloodlines.
They all love it. And that's the interesting part. And you can track all these bloodlines. That's a whole different deep dive. We could have spent this whole time going on.
Yeah.
But I think we're just the problem is people just go, it's like mental masturbation at this point. I think, like for me, like I've uncovered the entire, I mean, I've been on that for 30 years. Like I've got that all memorized. Like it's, that's like, I've got that down like scripture from, let's go to all the way through, no problem. And I just don't know where that's going to get us at the end of the day, when I'm going to help you on decode through 420 hours of, unveiling the bloodlines and all the secret.
Here's the thing. You could focus. I talk about this a lot when I talk about my end times series or whatever else. I could spend 10 hours a day talking about secret societies and what the devil has done in history, and you'll never run out of material. And a lot of people get caught up in that stuff and forget to really focus in on the real point, which is, again, from my perspective, the Bible isolates very clearly the throne of Satan as the papal power. And it tells you that the motivation of Satan is to bring the world into a one world situation to receive worship through this power by enforcing the mark of obedience, which is to rest in the provision that the devil will give you, which is this new world order with all of its comfy, tools and benefits, if you obey and you rest when the devil tells you to rest. And if you refuse and you try to rest when God, and you try to find rest in God and try to follow God's laws, then you will be in a conflict, just as they were from the very beginning all the way to the end, and you will be punished. And so that's what's coming. And I think if you learn a little bit about the Jesuits, that's great. If you learn about all these, different secret societies, that's great. But at the end of the day, you get lost in that stuff. The real understanding is, where is the world headed? The world is headed for...
It's necessary, though, for people to actually decode their minds, because until they actually think it's not real and see it's real, they're still going to think that those are, quote, conspiracies.
It can be useful. Absolutely. The dark of those things can really help to open up some... I believe that for sure.
You can go down a long, deep rabbit.
Yeah, you can become a truther. And like, you look at the truther movement, and to me, it's a counterfeit type of knowledge, because it's, yes, there's some truth there, but you get very easily lost into other cobwebs and rabbit holes, and then eventually you miss the actual truth that you need to learn, which is repent, trust Jesus, and live your one day at a time, living God's plan for your life. That's the truth, and everything else is secondary to that. You can know all about the Jesuits, but if you don't repent and trust in Christ, what's the point? You're going to be destroyed.
Society of Jesus, right? So they're righteous.
Yeah, synagogue of Satan, more like.
The Society of Jesus, and they have their own pope, of course. They have the Black Pope order. But, those are the deepest. The Jesuits have, by design, been the darkest sorcerers within the entire thing. And again, go YouTube Erev Ra. I'll send you some stuff on that. There's some rabbis that have spent an entire lifetime studying and tracking that. You should go invest some time into that, and then you'll realize, oh wow, this force they were infiltrated from the beginning. And when you realize that they were infiltrated from the beginning, then you realize how we're still infiltrated.
The Bible definitely has a consistent thread of counterfeit faith from the very beginning to the very end. Is always the issue is counterfeit faith.
The initial counterfeit faith was in the doubt of things they were actually observing. Can you imagine seeing the revelation according to, they say that they all saw it at the same time, but then still doubting after that?
Yeah, they saw all the 10 plagues of Egypt, and then a couple days later they wanted to find another god or do their own thing. They're doing whatever they were doing. So
when they have,
that's the wickedness of man. That's the wickedness of man, and why you need to have your heart changed by a supernatural power.
We got to be very careful with supernatural powers, because
that's true.
We have created enough drugs for people to think they have seen supernatural powers, and people are using ketamine and calling it spiritual grade ketamine and ceremonial grade LSD, and There's a dark force. And even and I don't do any drugs or drink alcohol of any kind, but for sure I am an ayahuasquero, so I understand the difference between medicines, which are plants, and drugs, which are chemicals. But even with the plants, people will go find fake false lights with that. And I mean, there are
for sure, yeah.
There are 2 Catholic churches that are Catholic churches from Brazil that use ayahuasca as, they call it daime, as their sacrament. They're called Santo Daime, and these people are drinking ayahuasca in the middle of the day and singing the Jesus in Portuguese. And they have this one work called the Illumination work, right? And the Illumination work, I've been there personally. They sing these hinerios, specific things, and within about 10 or 15 minutes, you can feel like the energy is very dark. And within another 20 minutes after that, people are like, there's people are getting tied up. Men are over there and women over here. And within like 1.5 hours, the only 3 people that are not tied up is me, one other person, and the guy who's serving this medicine. I was like, what the? I covered my mouth. I was like, this is the most dark. And then I asked the guy later, the father, I asked him, I said, the hell is that? And he said, this is the work of
Catholicism.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
No, it's Catholic. They're Catholic.
Yeah.
He said, Catholicism, right? He says, this is the illumination work. We all are praying to the Archangel Michael, and everyone in there is allowing their bodies to be a vessel, so that way the spirits that go from purgatory can enter our body. We purge them out, and they get to go to heaven.
Oh my gosh. That's horrible. That is massive delusion.
That is going on. And
nothing new under the sun, though.
Well, I was there one time, and I was invited by the heads of this thing, and I, will never go back. And hey, I do wish them the best with that. I know for sure that's not what they think is happening, and what's actually occurring are 2 completely different things. I saw that. I bear witness to that. That's for sure. But
that's crazy.
The problem is people can find false light anywhere, and people can, they want to believe in something that can, it's sad to see, but people can believe.
Well, we were created to worship God. Our purpose is fulfilled in worshiping God and having a connection with God. So when that connection is not there, that is why the first and second commandments have to deal with idolatry, because we naturally will gravitate to something to worship, whether it's ourselves, whether it's the world, whether it's another person. And so we are most fulfilled and only really truly fulfilled by being in a relationship with God. And that is the issue. That's the problem. But the problem is that you can't be in a relationship with God because God is holy. And so you have no way to access God because God is completely righteous and holy and you're a sinner. So this is a major problem. The thing that we need the most, we can't achieve. That's why the good news is that God has achieved it for us through the person of Jesus. So
that is a beautiful message. We can end on that. I will declare that I am definitely not a born sinner, although I do accept that my actions have led to sin. And
you don't have to be a born sinner. You just have to realize that you have sinned many times. And I'm not accusing you or anything. I'm just saying, like, everybody's sinned, and ultimately,
I have a poem in my book. It says, "You can paint with my sins a portrait of the past, yet tomorrow will always be a day away. Yet here in this moment, can we truly?" I'll send you a copy. I'm curious to know if you think my book of poetry and philosophy will be. I'm curious to know what you'll think of it.
Okay. Are you looking to publish it soon?
No, I'm distributing it freely.
Oh,
it was after just,
physical copies or
physical copy. Well, physical copies, there's a fee to that, but it costs money to print, but digitally I have. Here we go. I'll read this to you, Tudor. Would you like to hear a poem called Life in a Breath?
Sure.
Okay. You can paint with my sins a portrait of the past, yet tomorrow will always be a day away. Only here in this moment do we have the ability to create, to truly combine the heart's desire with the mind's focus to become. Your surroundings today are the finished product of yesterday's creation. Yet here in this very moment can you wash them away, like the never-ending ocean's wave with a single breath. And with the very next breath, you have the ability to breathe life into your truest creation, a reflection of your deepest hopes rising through your essence, like the morning sun to shine light upon the world in which you deserve. if you would only give yourself a chance. Each breath is a new opportunity to understand life in a new depth, because your breath is life itself. 22,000 opportunities a day, and all you have to do is choose one. Yet how many of us will move through life unaware of such a gift? Whether you are aware or not, you alone are the artist painting on the canvas of life with each and every breath you take.
It's a nice poem.
Thank you. And of course, your ending would be, and with the breath, it just takes one to accept.
There's a quote by, oh gosh, I forget the name. He's a reformer, the theologian.
Like a reformer.
Says every breath we take in, we suck in mercy. It's just a great quote, and I think it's true. I think that there's a part of it where you are getting in tune with the fact that God has given you another breath, and that's something to be grateful for.
The next one is not.
And there's also I think a profound message there, because forgiveness is built into nature. If you look at nature, the one consistent thing that we can observe is change. Things are always changing. They're changing from one thing to another. Anything that retains and hangs on is dying, whereas the things that change and move are alive, right? Things that are growing, like a plant that is growing, it has to, change and grow bigger. And of course, some of the plant material dies off and so on. So change is built into nature. And I think when you see that, you realize that forgiveness is part of the creator who coded all of these things, obviously is very forgiving. Somehow, if you didn't know who Jesus was, if you don't know who God was, if you just looked around, you just observed these things naturally, you'd say, well, there must be a God and he must be forgiving, because every moment is a chance to make a different choice, right? To go in a different route. Now, of course, at the same time, there's also the important context that the world is dying, and you can see that there's something wrong with the world, that you're dying, things are growing older, they're getting worse, there's natural disasters, something isn't right. There's all this harmony and nature and beauty and forgiveness, and then there's also this layer of suffering and evil and whatever else. So there's a problem that is revealed to you just by observing nature, and that is that God exists, he's just, he also must be forgiving some way. But how all this is reconciled is not clear. And of course, that is made clear in the gospel, in my opinion, because again, you have the reconciliation of justice and mercy. So I think that it's important to be forgiving. I think it's important to also forgive yourself, because I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. But forgiving yourself also has to be in the context of remembering that you are forgiven through Christ. Because if you have not repented and you refuse and you reject Christ, the message, the new age message of, oh, you just got to forgive yourself and move on, and you create your reality and all that stuff. It's like, that's not grounded in anything, because you forgiving yourself doesn't matter. It's God forgiving you that matters. And then once God has forgiven you, don't be so hard on yourself. Move forward.
Satanism would be the aspect of constantly forgiving yourself for anything you don't accept and glorifying.
Exactly. Yeah, you can do what you want, and you're free to do it.
World. Yeah. I agree with you 100%. Look, life, be embracing. When we inhale, we create a life, and then when we exhale, that process of the exhale is a single life. And like, what was the purpose of that life in the breath? That single breath, like that alone was a miracle. For the next one is not promised. And
that's true.
Walking is a series of controlled falls. Every time we take the next step, we stop the fall, the inevitable fall, the inevitable. And
that's why it matters to know what happens after you die, because you don't know what your tomorrow will bring.
Do I look like I'm worried about what happens after I die from this conversation?
I don't know. I don't think you have to be worried. I think you just have to know. That's
I'm aware. I'm aware of this grand mystery. How can I be so calm about it?
Well, the mystery's been revealed. It's in the 4 Gospels of the New Testament.
I got you.
It's very simple.
I got you.
It's still a mystery. Don't get me wrong. It's still a mystery. It's still a profound mystery, a mystery that we will marvel at for all of eternity. The fact that God did this thing. I mean, I still can't get over it. Every time I think about the fact that God, in his mercy, chose to take on a brutal punishment and humiliation on my behalf, is something that I will never, ever get over. And I think that's the point. So it's a profound mystery, but nevertheless, it's also something that's been revealed, that you do not have to worry about how the opposites of justice and mercy are reconciled. How can I be reconciled to God? How can I live forever? How can I truly have life? How can I have the peace beyond understanding that the world can never rob from me? Because there's such a thing as false peace. People have a false assurance of salvation, like the religious people, the Catholics, or the Jews, or the Muslims. They think that they're like the perfect example of this, and this is an extreme example, but the perfect example are these suicide bombers who are given the idea that are, listen, you go into
just real quick, that has nothing to do with Islam. What that is a
oh, for sure,
that's Wahhabi Islam. And by the way, if you know where that was created and the family behind that, and
there's a whole dialectic there. Absolutely,
yes, because there's but in the Quran says to take the life of one person is to kill all of humanity, and to save the life of one is to save all of mankind. That's the value of life. So knowing that that's in your holy book, you cannot do that. I mean, that doesn't.
There are some passages of the Quran that people read violently, just like, let's be honest, these nationalistic NAR, Seven Mountain Mandate Christians are taking the Old Testament and the New Testament and saying we have to Christianize all of society for Christ. And,
that's
so look, people will weaponize, these things all the time. But the point is that these people thought that by killing all of these innocent people with a bomb strapped to their body, they're going to go to heaven, and they're convinced of this reality that they're going to have all these virgins, when in reality they're going to be resurrected, and God is going to throw them into the lake of fire for being wicked. And so this is why knowing the truth is so important, because even though we may feel the truth, or we may feel that we're on the right path, the book of Proverbs from Solomon says, there is a way that seems right to a man, but its way leads to death. And so there's a constant warning of the almost right. It seems right, but it's actually not right, and it's leading you to destruction. And so this is why having discernment is so important, and why having an objective standard is so important. And that objective standard for me is the Bible. So
that also could be your tool or your weapon of awakening. I like to say like a weapon of mass awakening, and yours is the Bible.
Unfortunately, it is in some sense, because Jesus said the gospel will go out to the whole world so that everybody has a chance to repent. But that's going to happen. But the problem is that
that did happen. The Christianity.
Well, yes, I mean, it did happen in the sense that the Christianity has gone out throughout the whole world. But what the Bible mainly warns of at the end is not a great awakening, but a great delusion. Most people will be taking the mark of the beast. Most people will be participating in this religious revival and thinking it's a good thing when they see peace in the Middle East, when they see the Jews and the Muslims convert and have charismatic awakenings. They're going to think that it's a move of God, of the Holy Spirit. And now we're in the golden age. The millennial kingdom has come, which of course is another deception. And they're going to buy it. So the people who are not going to buy it are going to be called
Maitreya Buddha, right?
Yeah, Maitreya. Yeah, the coming of the universal Christ or whatever. Yeah. So, that's on the horizon, and the people who are not going to participate in that system are going to be called legalists, are going to be called cult members, are going to be called, Judaizers, whatever. Just look in history and you'll find perfect examples of templates for that. So yeah, I definitely speak the truth.
I will not be bowing nor kissing any of that stuff.
You're not going to kiss the Pope's ring? Well, that's good.
You will never see me do that, nor will you see me take the vaccine. Any of them.
Okay, good. Yeah. Trump is all about it now, and it's like the clot father strikes again with his AI, mRNA. What was it? Him and that guy from Oracle, who's a Zionist Jew, and then the other Sam Altman, another, Jewish puppet.
They just put $800 billion.
Yeah, I don't know if they have that money, but either way, they're going to put a lot of money.
$800 billion fund that's going to the AI situation. SoftBank.
Oh, for sure.
$200 billion of the $800 billion. It's going to be.
And it's like people will find if that was Hillary or Obama doing those things, people would be up in arms. But because it's Trump, America, just this and that. It's like
I felt for the Obama. Everyone felt for the Obama thing because he was a contrast again because we had 8 years of Bush and
dark and light.
Yeah, dark and light.
Two sides of the occult.
We had that. So when I saw Obama talking about reinstating habeas corpus and Guantanamo Bay and shutting down everything. I was like, wow, we finally we did it. But no. You bombed more people, invaded more countries, killed more people than Bush. If you drew a line, you can't even tell where change happened.
Yeah, they're all the same. They're all part of the establishment. This country, the United States, has had, in the first 100 years of its inception, 6 at least of the presidents were assassinated by the Jesuits.
Mm-hmm.
Then the Jesuits fomented the Civil War. Then they made the country bankrupt so that they could take out loans from the Rothschilds, create the federal government. Then 50 years later, you had the Titanic incident to kill off opposition to the Federal Reserve. And you're telling me that Trump is somehow a lone wolf that not only made it to a full term without getting assassinated, now he's, against the establishment. Every pick that he's had has been establishment people.
Oh, highest level.
Oh, absolutely. He's surrounded by Zionists. He's surrounded by Catholic hardcore, like Templar, Opus Dei, Project 2025 people that want to implement a Catholic hierarchy in the United States.
What we're saying right now is going to be the new anti-vaxxer. This conversation,
for sure,
right
I'm aware of it.
Is about to be the new anti-vaxxer.
Yeah,
and then the funniest part is they're like, you're going to try to tell me I'm anti-Semitic. Okay, that makes sense. Or that you're against Christians. They're going to start. You're going to be labeled whatever the terminology is.
Jesus said, "You are not a servant is not greater than their master." So if they did it to me, then they're going to do it to you. If they accuse Jesus of terrorism, blasphemy, being demonically possessed, whatever other things that they accused him of, and they killed him, obviously, then what does that tell you? That tells you that you don't stand a chance. Once the system comes into power, the beast right now, you see, the problem, Omar, is that there are many layers between the beast and the people it really wants to kill, which are the people who are faithful to God and they keep the Sabbath. And I'm not saying like in a legalistic way, but they find rest in God. And part of finding that rest in faith is also expressing yourself in moral behaviors because you have been given a new heart. And one of those moral behaviors is to rest one day out of the week mindfully with gratitude and mindfulness and enjoy God's creation. That's part of a renewed heart, in my opinion. Those people are the ones the beast really wants to kill, but it can't do that because there's liberals and Jews and Muslims and communists in the way. But eventually all these fires are going to be put out. The communistic paradigm is collapsing. Zionism is starting to get exposed, and so is the jihadis. These two extremes are going to get, nullified. You're going to have the moderates of both the Jews and the Muslims who are going to be perfect foundation for creating a Middle East peace treaty and a charismatic revival. Pretty soon, once all these people are, taken care of, then there's the last people on earth which are refusing to bow down to this system. And those people will be now all of the heads of the Hydra that are barking in different directions. That's going to be like, hey, now they're focusing on you, you dirty little rebellious, law-breaking, you're against God, you're against God's will, Antichrist, whatever else. So that's the future that awaits. But ultimately, the peace beyond understanding that the gospel offers is that fear not he who destroys the body, who can destroy the body, but fear he who can destroy both body and soul in hell. So ultimately, the hope that we have is that by Jesus' resurrection, God has given a promise to those who believe that no matter what happens to you, you will be resurrected and live forever in a perfect world with him. Therefore, the devil's power over death, which he had before Jesus came, the devil had power over death to manipulate humanity into these false systems of worship because the devil fooled Adam and Eve into a cursed world, and he knew that God is just and would have to punish them. But God, being on a higher level, is playing all that out to reveal the gospel in five-dimensional chess. Anyway, the devil had power over death, and death was the greatest idol that mankind ever had. And Jesus destroyed that idol through his own death and resurrection. So by putting our faith in that and knowing that God is true with his promise, nothing the devil can do to you in this world can stand a chance. The reason the people who were fed to lions, for crying out loud, crucified for sport in the 1st and 2nd centuries and 3rd centuries, the reason these people were able to endure such horrible, and not only that, they were enduring backstabbing and betraying from their own family while all this stuff was happening. The reason these people were able to endure such horrible, horrible experiences, the reason all of the apostles were horribly martyred, except John, but John was boiled alive in oil The reason they were able to do it it wasn't because of hallucinations. It was because they experienced the truth, and the truth gave them a peace beyond all understanding, which is that nothing that the devil can do in this world with this worldly matrix can harm the promise that God has given me. And that is the fuel of the good news. That's the good news.
That is very powerful and inspiring. We've seen that type of faith displayed also by, the Buddhist monk that sets himself on fire.
Right.
We've seen it.
And
obviously had faith.
There is faith there, but the driving force behind that faith is not the same as somebody who is, let's say, getting martyred for witnessing Jesus to some pagans somewhere.
I'm saying everything that you named, which is a sure testament of the faith of an individual in something. In your case, you're speaking about their belief in Jesus as God, but we witness it with people, through Buddhism.
We do, but faith is not how do I phrase this? Faith is not just something that exists in a vacuum. Faith is something that is pointed in a particular direction. So a Buddhist monk who believes in basically the highest experience being nothing and annihilating yourself, enduring being burned alive, is faith pointed in a particular direction. I would argue that what that's pointed at is a deception. It's a delusion. Now, can that delusion give you a lot of motivation? Absolutely. There's a lot of delusions that give a lot of people lots of motivation. Doesn't mean it's the truth. Faith that is pointed in the truth can also give you strength, and I would argue even more strength. But either way, there's a difference. Faith is not equivalent because faith is something that's pointed in a particular direction. What do you believe? Atheists. The atheists you're going to have that you're going to talk to, they have faith. They're not going to say they do, but they have faith in their materialistic paradigm. And most atheists, again, atheism is not a rational position. It's not rational.
I would say that the people that display the most like outward faith would probably be like the Orthodox, like the Orthodox philosophy debate lords.
Yeah, the Ortho Bros.
They've spent like a decade memorizing terminology and trying to like pin you on.
Oh gosh,
thing.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay.
They love their debates, man. Everybody's like, debate me. Oh, you got to call this guy. I'm like, dude, do you know how much it takes to prepare for a debate? Like, I'm like other things I want to do to create to help edify people.
I'm about to jump into several of those, and I have no problem using debate. Because at the end of the day, you're, like, there's some very specific key points that I can just throw at them, and they can't argue it. So everything you're saying is an appeal to emotion, is a logical fallacy, it's very simple to argue that stuff, but it doesn't go anywhere because you're just trying to pinpoint why I'm wrong. It's like, it's like the old argument of like chocolate or vanilla. Like, just because I don't have to prove to the audience that vanilla is the best, I just have to prove that chocolate isn't. That you're, instead of saying vanilla is the best and you say chocolate is the best, I just have to prove that chocolate isn't the best and there's other flavors, and then I win the debate. It's a stupid.
That's the lawyer model of the modern court system.
Socratic, yeah. It's just the same game. I can play that game all day. The difference is that that's not going to actually get anywhere, and that's just all mental masturbation. At the end of the day, like, I can sit here and appeal to authority. Okay, what authority you're appealing to, and I can just dissect and attack. And I can utilize the same exact books that you have to dismantle your argument. But then I'm getting myself into this like dark space that I'm not really, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to get into it. Now, if someone comes, I'm getting in the middle of this argument with this guy, Jay Dyer. He's really trying to, he tried to insult me.
He's like Orthodox, right?
Oh, big time.
Oh yeah. I think that somebody told me, oh, you got to debate Jay Dyer. I'm like, I don't care, man. Orthodoxy is going to be integrated into Catholicism pretty soon. I really don't care.
I'm going to try to set that up. He basically he couldn't take what I asked him 2 questions. He went on tilt hard.
What did you ask him?
I said, if we're going to talk about God, can we first describe what God is? To me, God, can we set like a foundation of? He said, yes. I said, great. God, meaning the almighty supreme force from which all was created that will ever exist, and all exists within. And he says, yes. Okay, great. I said, do you believe that God can consolidate its infinite wisdom, power, force into a planet or perhaps a sun? He said, no. I said, how about a mountain? He said, no. I said, well, then how could he put that into a human? And he said, Ecclesiastes 22. And I said, where did that come from? He said, Paul. And I said,
Ecclesiastes doesn't have 22 chapters.
I think he said, doesn't matter. The point is, he said, a book. He said, a book, a part of a book. And I said, and where did that come from? He said, Paul. I said, so you're telling me that this is a fact because someone else said so. And he just lost it. Then he muted me, and then he started to try to attack ayahuasca and drugs. And then he got off after like a 3-minute rant.
Oh, well, that's a shame.
It was a 5-minute debate.
Well, the Old Testament and the New Testament both say that nothing is impossible for God. So
no, but it's a conversation.
I don't think it's impossible for God to.
It doesn't matter. You could tell me
come into a human body.
You could tell me how, Omar. You could easily just tell me, Omar, if you don't believe in that, then how do you know God exists? You could just throw it right back at me. Have me explain my secured state of why I believe God exists. And sure. I'm going to give personal testimony and da 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 da, and none of those grounded in objective reality, other than my. Okay, so here we are. You believe something, and I believe something. Great. Right, and here we are.
Yeah, but see that he should have. There is a lot of objective evidence for the veracity of the Bible. That's something that he should have talked about. There's a lot of objective evidence for the truthfulness of the Bible, more so than I don't think any of these other books like the Quran or the Vedas have any objective proof of the veracity of their claims, not of their historicity or like if they happened or not. Muhammad obviously was a real person, but the Bible is unique as a text in terms of its archaeological proof, its Bible prophecies, its consistency. I mean, it was written over 1,500 plus years with dozens of authors, and they have a consistent message. If you read the Quran is like a mishmash of stuff. It's just all over the place. Whereas the Bible shows you a consistent picture of Christ from the very beginning with Adam and Eve. I have read some of the Quran. I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read of the Quran. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not impressed whatsoever. You can tell it's not an inspired book whatsoever. It's just like the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is interesting. Yeah, when you read the Bible, you first off, nobody in history spoke like Jesus. I think you can admit that nobody in history spoke like Jesus and had the level of wit and wisdom and unique way of speaking
Socrates?
Like Jesus. No, not even close. Socrates. Well, Shakespeare was Francis Bacon. That's number one.
Okay, but
I don't think he actually existed. But Francis Bacon was very eloquent with his language. But the things that Jesus reveals in terms of like parables and spiritual truths.
When you read my book, maybe.
Not at all even close to Jesus.
No, you said not.
Good try.
You said that
probably better than. I'll tell you what. Probably better than Muhammad. Probably way better than Muhammad. That's for sure. Probably better than the Quran.
I mean, it depends on perspectives, because for me, I don't get very impressed with reading words. I'm also dyslexic, so I can't really read anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And you wrote poetry? That's interesting.
I just spoke it into an iPhone over.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Text, and then eventually I took and then had my assistant throw it into words. And I said, when it gets to 155 pages, tell me. And then they pulled.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's just I just will get inspired, and then I'll talk it. I can't really.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a lot of tedious work to produce like books and stuff.
Yeah,
it takes a lot of work. But the Bible has a lot of. There's some great archaeology channels like
Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus who?
Marcus Aurelius. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Considered one of the great works.
Yeah, the wisdom of the world is foolishness to God, says the Bible. Everybody has their life hacks, but in the end, it doesn't mean anything if you do not frame it from the ultimate truth that has the ultimate consequence. There's a lot of things that seem wise and interesting, but without the proper frame, which of the thing that has the most consequence, then they're all just foolishness.
Let's see, Tudor. This one's called Who Am I? Who am I? Who is asking?
That's the poem.
It's much longer than that, but that's a good start.
Oh,
that's a good way.
Yeah, that is a good start. Yeah,
it's a good
that's
one.
Cool.
Yeah, but anyway, I had a great conversation with Tudor. I think that the debate platform that we're about to do is going to be amazing.
Is this like everybody in the room at the same time, or how's this going to go?
Well, first is like these one-on-one conversations. I'm going to have
right
with you. Then I have one with the leader of the ISUPK, the Black Hebrew Israelites, tomorrow. Then on Monday with an atheist philosopher.
Then my goodness.
Yeah. Then I have a philosopher that he's a Christian, but I don't know I don't know. I think he's kind of loose with it. I don't really know. He's pretty big. I have a rabbi.
What's his name?
I don't want to say
the philosopher Christian
until he confirms. Dr. Mark something. I think because this is
okay.
Dr. Mark something. I'll message you direct. I'll message you everything. I'll message you the details of the.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll take any recommendations. And then after those conversations, I'm going to have people vote so they can see who they want to have conversations, and then it's going to be.
So it's going to be like a bracket, like a March Madness type of thing, or what?
Vote to see who is going to have the conversation. I don't really care who people think won, because that's predetermined in their worldview. I more care about who of contrasting perspectives people want to see next. I'm not going to do this who won the debate.
Right. Okay.
I don't think. I think that's me. That's not, that goes against the whole point. To me, I think we all win. I think we'll all win is the point. Will there be like arguments and yeah, of course, like there's some people don't understand, but those people who need to argue because their faith gets tested. Like I've asked you questions that in certain time periods in the world, in certain parts of the world, like if I asked you these questions in 1100 AD in England, I could get stoned to death for some of the questions I'm asking you, right? By the Church of England. You didn't care at all. We're asking questions, I said Paul may be an heir of Rob. You didn't even flinch, right? So you're secure in your faith and you have responses, right? Simultaneously, you could tell me I have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, that's great. It's literally irrelevant, right? So at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to lose their minds. I mean, there's going to be people that are going to lose their minds in these one-on-one conversations for sure. They're going to lose their minds, but I'm equipped for that. Like we're not going to, I'm not going to. I just give people the same levels of respect that I get, But yeah, and then we're going to just have the debate platform. I don't know how many people we're going to get up to. It may be like 3 maximum, because after that it gets just a little crazy. And we'll have like distinct specific subjects, like so people can vote on subjects and so on. But I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be exciting, and I think that I'm not planning on monetizing in any way. I think that that's not the plan. Is to monetize these things. Is to have these things out there in the public domain, and then more people are going to see it, and people are going to make videos talking about Tudor Alexander doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Here's my 32-minute.
Can't wait.
Video about him. But at the end of the day, what it will do.
Hey, any publicity is good publicity, right?
That's my point. And these conversations, are going to go towards your page, and then people are going to learn. They don't need to accept your faith or your worldview or your only path to salvation to go to your website, The Dance of Life, on your YouTube page and learn.
Yeah.
I have personally watched, I think, at least 10 hours of your stuff. Did I not know these things before? No, I knew most of the stuff already, but it's great to hear someone else laying it out. And I remember a lot of things that the way you've laid it out is really good. And a lot of these things are super important, especially the things that we're talking about specifically that relate to what's to come, which is like why you're mentioning
that is important.
Certain things, and not just in the positive aspect of it at the end, when the true light prevails over the false light, of course, but just understanding and being more aware of the stuff, and we'll see what happens. There's not going to be a winner. There's not going to be a trophy at the end of this. I don't have a trophy.
No trophy with Omar's awesome debate on it engraved.
We'll do something, brother.
Champion.
Because then
Free Thought Unchained champion.
Free Thought Unchained. Do you like it?
It's a cool title, yeah, for sure.
Right, Free Thought Unchained, like Django Unchained.
Like Django.
No, that's not the reason, but someone said that to me. I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. It was a good movie. That's not the.
I never saw it. I wanted to see it. I never saw it. It looked good.
It's a Tarantino masterpiece. I mean,
he
really pushes the boundary. Leonardo DiCaprio's best role ever. It was really good, but no, I mean, the platform is just to have these conversations. I do my normal things. I make my videos. I have messaging and certain works that I'm putting out. But yeah, I think more now than ever is more important for this conversations to happen, people to be inspired. If someone's Christian already, they hear you, they're like, okay, this they can feel your sincerity, what you're talking about. They go to your path. I have a bunch of, not a bunch, like two different rabbis who are great men who do not subscribe to any of the bullshit and really are true, like truly faithful in their thing. And whereas you probably think that I would get a rabbi on here so you guys can argue back and forth, I think there's going to be, with the right people, the conversation's really just going to go up into the understanding of things. And I don't expect you and, the rabbi to agree at the end of the day, obviously, because that would mean that the rabbi would either have to accept, which, I mean, who knows what can happen.
You never know.
He may accept, or you may go away from your faith. You may say,
no, that'll never happen.
You may go, oh my God, you're right. But again, it doesn't matter which one of those things happen. That's not the point of the subject. The subject is to be able to go back into a living, like just the town square, right? Without judgment.
Sure.
Without judgment.
It's valuable. Yeah.
Of course it is, because at the end of the day, people need to wake up, right? And so, I don't think I spouted any scriptural leanings in any way. Again, the point was to have you on here and have a good conversation and showcase your worldview, your philosophy, your thought process, and then pinpoint specific things that are key and important, challenge on certain things so you can explain those, and then move on to the next situation.
Sure. Yeah, I had a great time. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
We'll do it again, man. Well, you know what we'll do next time? We'll leave the religion and we'll go into something else. We can go into ancient history. Okay. Or we can go into any of the stuff. Well, you know what? We'll let the comments. We'll see what people ask for.
Yeah, see what people want.
What they want is the truth.
That's right. They want the truth.
And I think that we're clear on what that is from your perspective, for sure.
That's right.
And I respect it. I respect it, Tudor, Free Thought Unchained. I appreciate you. I'll message you the everything I told you I would, and we'll do this again, brother.
Awesome. Great time. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Talk soon.
See ya.